Okay, so quick review. Let's look at determining the number of significant figures. Let's see here. Okay, so let's start with A, excuse me, 554 kilometers. So I have three non-zero digits, so I'm going to have three significant figures. 7 pennies, one non-zero digit, so I'm going to have one significant figure. 1.01 times 10 to the fifth. Remember, our exponents don't count in significant figures. I have a decimal number. So I have a 0 that falls behind a non-zero digit, so it will count. So I have three significant figures. Here, I have four leading zeros. They're just placeholders. So I have two significant figures. In E, I have a decimal, so that makes a difference. These are trailing zeros, but trailing zeros and a decimal number do count. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 significant figures. Here, 21,000, I do have three trailing zeros, but there's no decimal. And because there's no decimal, those trailing zeros do not count. So I have two significant figures. Okay, so moving on, now that we can determine the number of significant figures in a number, we're going to look at significant figures in calculations. There's two sets of rules for this. There's one set of rules for answering to the correct number of significant figures for multiplication and division, and there's a second rule for addition and subtraction. We'll start with multiplication and division. The rule for multiplication and division is your answer should be to the least amount of significant figures presented in the problem. Here's what I mean by that. All right, so here's my problem. In this problem, I'm multiplying 3.56 times 4. Here, I have three significant figures. Here, I have one. So my answer should be to the least number of significant figures in the problem. So that means my answer should just include one significant figure. Now when I multiply this is what I get. So I need to round it to one significant figure, which would give me this. Okay, let's look at a couple more. Here, how many significant figures do I have? I have 4. Here, I have 2. So my answer should be to two significant figures. So here I get, this is what you get when you multiply it. I can't round that up to be 11, right? I can't round a 3 up to be 11. So I'm stuck with 10. However, that's only one significant figure and I need 2. So what I have to do here is put it in scientific notation. Sometimes you have to do this in order to make the significant figures work. Okay. So here we go. Let's look at this one. Here's division. Same rule as multiplication. How many significant figures? I have 3. I have 1. So when I do the math, I should get 1 in my answer. So my answer should end up being just 5. Okay. Now on this one here, I want to show you something. Remember we talked about conversion factors do not count with significant figures. So this here, this here, and this here, those are conversion factors. They don't participate in how many significant figures we should have at the end. The only one that does is what I'm starting with, the 4.5 feet. So I have two significant figures there. So there should be 2 in my answer. So when I multiply across top and divide by the bottom, this is what I get. So I would round that to 1.4 meters. Okay. The next rule is addition and subtraction. So here we go. Addition and subtraction is different than multiplication and division. All right. And the reason being is because it deals with decimal places, actually not the number of significant figures. So the rule for this is your answer should be to the least amount of decimal places presented in the problem. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if I'm adding these here, this first one has 3 decimal places. The second one has 2 decimal places. So my answer should have 2 decimal places in it. So I add them all together, and then I know I'm just going to have 2 decimal places, so I'll round up, and this would be my answer. This one here, I'm doing 454 minus 0.68. Okay, this one here has 0 decimal places, so there's none. This one here has 2. Which one is less? The less is 0. So when I do this math, I'm going to round it to 0 decimal places, so I get 456 for my answer. Okay, I'd like you to take a moment and go ahead and work these problems out. Hey, how was your lunch? Kind of jealous. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so let's look at A. A has multiplication and division only. So you can go ahead and do this whole thing together because the same rule applies. The answer should be to the least number of significant figures. So let's look at what that is. This one has 3 significant figures. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so our answer should be to 3 significant figures. So if I do this, just do the math, I get 0.65219, which I'm going to round to 3 significant figures. So it'll just be this, 0.652. That would be my answer. Right? Okay. All right, here we just have addition and subtraction. So again, it's one rule. It's the least amount of decimal places. So here I have 3 decimal places. Here I have 1. And here I have 4. So my answer will be to 1 decimal place. When I do this math without rounding, I get 4.873. So now I'm going to round it to 1 decimal place. So my answer will be 4.9. So that will be my answer. Now in C, I have 2 rules. Here I have multiplication and division, and here I have subtraction. Subtraction is in parentheses, so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. So it's the least amount of decimal places. So I'll do this math, and the answer should be to 2 decimal places. So when I do it, I get 0.35. Okay, so now we've taken care of that. Now it's all one thing. It's multiplication and division. So we have 4.562 times 3.99870 divided by 0.35. Now the rule here is the least amount of decimal places. So I have 4 here. Excuse me, the least amount of significant figures. So I have 4 here. I have 6 here. And I have 2 here. So my answer should be to 2 decimal places. And you should end up, it's not, I did it again, 2 decimal, to 2 significant figures. So my answer should be 52. Same thing applies here. I'm going to do these parentheses first. It's multiplication, least amount of decimal places. And if I do that math, I get 8.2. It'd be 2 significant figures because I have 4 here and 2 there. Then I'm going to do the subtraction. So I have 1 decimal place here, 2 decimal places here. So when I do the subtraction, I get 0.18, but I only want 1 decimal place. So my answer would be 0.2. And that would be it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give you one more to look at and take a second. And I'm just going to give you the answers for them to check your work. Okay, your answers here, this should be 0.381. This should be 121.0, 1.174, and 9.